She looked at herself in the mirror, tears streaming down her cheeks, blurring the reflection of the woman she once knew. Inside her, a life was growing, a fetus that pulsed with potential, yet felt like a heavy stone in her chest. Amora was pregnant by a man she had once seen as a father figure, a guardian who had promised to guide her through the tumultuous waters of adolescence. Instead, he had plunged her into a nightmare from which she could not wake. Multiple attempts to escape her pain through suicide had failed. It was as if death itself had turned its back on her, leaving her to endure this unbearable existence. This was the story of Amora, a young woman who had lost her prime, her innocence, and her dreams. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the village of Umuoko. The warm wind carried a bitter chill, echoing the turmoil within Amora's heart. She sat beneath the old mango tree, a sanctuary from her troubles, yet now it felt like a prison. Once, she had come here to daydream about a bright future filled with laughter and love. Now, the laughter felt like a distant memory, replaced by a gnawing dread that consumed her thoughts. How had kindness turned into cruelty? How had Mr. Okoro, the man who had promised to help her education, transformed into the architect of her despair? As she sat there, the weight of her secret pressed down on her like a suffocating blanket. She was terrified of the judgment that loomed over her like a storm cloud ready to unleash its fury. The whispers of the villagers, the disappointment in her mother's eyes, these thoughts spiraled in her mind, making her feel more isolated than ever. Just when her tears threatened to overflow, she heard the familiar voice of Ijeoma, her aunt, approaching. "Amora, why do you sit here like this?" Ijeoma asked, her basket of vegetables forgotten at her feet. Her sharp yet gentle gaze pierced through Amora's facade. "You're not fine. I can see it in your eyes. Something is weighing you down." Amora forced a weak smile, shaking her head. "I'm just tired from helping Mama." But Ijeoma wasn't fooled. She sat beside Amora, her presence a comforting balm against the turmoil. "No, you're not. Tell me what's troubling you." Amora's throat tightened as the words she had held back for so long finally spilled out. "Auntie, I think I'm pregnant." The silence that followed felt like a death sentence. Ijeoma's eyes widened in shock. "Pregnant," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She looked around, ensuring their conversation remained private. "Who did this to you, child?" Tears flowed freely down Amora's cheeks, her body racked with sobs. "Mr. Okoro. He said he'd help me, that he'd pay for my school fees. I didn't know what to do. He promised, and I thought." Ijeoma's face twisted in disbelief, a mix of sorrow and fury. She took Amora in her arms, holding her tightly as if to shield her from the world's cruelty. "No, no child should have to go through this. And you, Amora, you are not alone." Amora clung to her, feeling the warmth of Ijeoma's love seep into her bones. The man who had offered her a chance at a future had stripped her of her dignity, leaving her with a burden she never asked for. The next day, Ijeoma ensured Amora spoke to her mother, Miriam. A single mother who had sacrificed everything for her daughter, Miriam had always been Amora's rock, shielding her from life's harsh realities. But now, it was Amora who needed protection. Amora walked into their small hut, the faint smell of cooking wafting through the air, a bittersweet reminder of home. Miriam looked up, her smile warm and inviting. "You've been gone for a while. What did you do? Go get lost in the village again?" But Amora's smile faded, replaced by a heavy dread that settled in her chest. She stood in silence, the words heavy on her tongue. "Mama, I need to tell you something." Miriam's expression shifted, concern clouding her face. "What is it, my child?" Amora hesitated, her heart racing. The words felt too painful to let go. "Mama, I'm pregnant." Miriam's face froze, the warmth of the room dissipating in an instant. The folds in her forehead deepened, and time seemed to stand still. As her eyes searched Amora's face for some glimmer of hope, the reality settled in like a crushing weight. Miriam staggered back, gripping the back of a chair for support. "No, no, not you, Amora. Not my daughter," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I didn't want this, Mama. I didn't know what to do." Amora's voice broke as she collapsed into her mother's arms, the dam of her anguish finally bursting. Miriam's hands trembled as she stroked her daughter's hair, a tumult of emotions swirling within her. Anger, disbelief, and a deep sorrow coursed through her veins. The man she had trusted, the landlord who had offered help in their time of need, had taken advantage of her daughter's vulnerability. But as the initial shock subsided, a fierce determination ignited within Miriam. She pulled back to look into Amora's tear-streaked face, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. "Listen to me, Amora. We will face this together. You are not alone, and we will not let this define your life." Amora nodded, feeling the weight of her mother's love and strength envelop her like a warm blanket. They talked long into the night, planning how to navigate the uncertain road ahead. Miriam promised to support her daughter, no matter what the future held. As the months passed, the reality of Amora's pregnancy became more tangible. Her body changed, and with it, the emotional turmoil deepened. She often found herself staring at her reflection, grappling with feelings of shame and fear. The whispers of the village felt like a constant echo, reminding her of the judgment that awaited her. Then came the day when the labor pains began, sharp and relentless. Amora clutched her mother's hand, her heart racing with fear. "Mama, I can't do this," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "You can, my love. Just breathe. I'm right here with you," Miriam reassured her, her voice a soothing balm against the storm of emotions. The hours dragged on, each contraction a wave of pain that threatened to pull Amora under. She squeezed her mother's hand tightly, drawing strength from her presence. But just as the baby was ready to emerge, complications arose. The midwife's face turned grave, and panic spread through the room. "Miriam, we need to get her to the hospital. There are complications," the midwife said urgently. "No, she can't go," Amora cried, her voice frantic. But there was no time to argue. With her mother's support, they rushed to the village hospital, the journey filled with Amora's cries of pain and fear. The world outside blurred as they sped through the darkened streets, Amora's heart racing with the realization that she was about to become a mother. Inside the hospital, chaos ensued as doctors and nurses rushed to help. Amora felt a surge of fear as she was wheeled into the delivery room. "Mama, don't leave me," she screamed, her voice echoing in the sterile space. "I'm right here, Amora. You're strong, and you can do this," Miriam shouted back, her voice unwavering despite the fear in her eyes. But as the minutes turned into hours, the strain on Miriam became evident. She was pale, her breathing labored as she paced outside the delivery room, praying for her daughter's safety. Just as Amora pushed through the final moments of labor, a sudden hush fell over the room. "Mama!" Amora screamed as she felt a release, and moments later, the cries of a newborn filled the air. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived as she looked around for her mother. "Miriam," she called out, panic rising in her chest. A nurse rushed in, her expression serious. "We need to attend to your mother. She's fainted." Amora's heart sank as the room spun around her. She could barely comprehend the joy of becoming a mother as fear gripped her. "No, please. She can't leave me too," she cried, tears streaming down her cheeks. As the nurses took her mother away, Amora held her newborn daughter, Neka, close to her chest. The weight of the world felt unbearable as she realized she was now a single mother of two, her newborn and the child she had yet to face, the one growing within her. Days turned into a blur as Amora recovered from childbirth. She learned to care for Neka while grappling with the loss of her mother. Miriam had passed away shortly after the complications in the hospital, leaving Amora with a chasm of grief that felt insurmountable. The village mourned Miriam's passing, but the whispers about Amora intensified. Alone and overwhelmed, she struggled to balance the needs of her newborn and the emotional scars that threatened to consume her. The weight of motherhood felt heavier than ever, and every day was a battle against despair. Weeks later, as Amora tried to navigate her new reality, Mr. Okoro, the man who had caused her so much pain, returned to the village. He approached her one evening as she sat under the old mango tree, the very place where her dreams had once flourished. "I've come to apologize, Amora," he said, his voice low and remorseful. "I know I've wronged you, and I can't take back what I've done. But I want to make amends. I want to help you." Amora's heart raced with anger and confusion. She sued him for child support while maintaining custody of the kids.